Hey guys, what's up? My name is Sky Webb and I'm here to talk about a true crime story that I cannot get off my mind. But before I get started, I just want to put out a little disclaimer that I mean no harm to any of the victims or the victims' families, and I wish everyone who was hurt within this story the utmost peace and solace, either in rest or in recovery. With that out of the way, happy True Crime Thursday. This week's story is literally drenched in sus activities. It is so mysterious. I have no idea what happened to this woman, but what I do know is that there probably is more to the story than what we've been told, but I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Today's case is the Tamla Horsford murder. Tamla Horsford was born on the 10th of October 1978 in a town called Cumming in the state of Georgia. She was a loving wife, a loving mother of 6 children. She was a neighbor, a friend, a sister. People loved her. She was a really strong member of the community and she was kind of adored. Her family all said how beautiful she was, how kind she was, how she would always give more than she ever took, and she was just a really wonderful person. Unfortunately though, on the 4th of November 2018, Tamla Horsford lost her life at only 40 years old. The night Tamla passed away, she was attending a birthday party sleepover at one of her friends' house in a town called Forsyth, Georgia. There were 7 other women in attendance, all between the ages of 40 and 60, and they were all white women except for Tamla, who was the only black woman in attendance. The host and birthday girl, John Myers, made sure that the sleepover was women only, girls only, no men allowed, but that didn't include her boyfriend at the time, Jose Barrera. So he was in attendance with 2 other men, reportedly, who were his friends. Now, there's actually a lot of speculation about why the party was being held to begin with, because people just can't wrap their heads around the fact that a group of elderly women would want to have a sleepover, which I don't find that weird. Am I the only one who just thinks that that's normal? My mum used to have sleepovers with her friends, except they would bring their kids over and we'd just have everyone would have a sleepover. But I don't know, I don't feel like it's that weird. It was just a bunch of old women drinking wine and hanging out for a birthday. I feel like that makes sense, but there's a lot of speculation about it because people just think that it's fucking weird. No one can imagine doing that for some reason, and a lot of people believe that it was actually an adult party, a swingers party. But the collective agreement from all the people that were actually in attendance that night, they all agreed that it was just a birthday party for John. There is some footage from the women's phones that night of them just having a good time and dancing and laughing and singing, and they were drinking. There was maybe 1 or 2 women who looked like they might have drank a little bit too much, but for the most part, it didn't seem like anyone had drank to the excess that anything bad would happen, especially not Tamla. She seemed fine in the videos that we were able to watch. However, between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. the next morning, Tamla Horsford was found dead, face down on the grass in the backyard. It was assumed she'd fallen from the 2nd story balcony. So Tamla's body was found by the homeowner's aunt, who arrived that morning and saw her in the backyard. So she ran inside to alert people that there's someone sleeping in the backyard. She assumed that Tamla was sleeping, and so that's what she reportedly reported to the people within the house. And then it was John's boyfriend, Jose, who went outside to check on her, and when they called 911, he was the one to talk to them and, relay the information and try and figure out if she was breathing or not.
Forsyth County 911.
My name is John Myers, Jeanne.
Hey, what's going on?
We had people over last night. We were drinking. Most of us went to bed. One of them stayed on the balcony. She was drinking. And we just went outside, and she's laying face down in the backyard. It looks like I'm guessing maybe she fell off the balcony, but she's stiff.
Okay, is she breathing?
I don't know if she's face down.
Okay. How old is she?
At 41. Here, hold on.
Hey, this is Jose Barrera.
Hey, have y'all checked to see if she's breathing?
She's not moving one bit. She's not breathing.
Okay.
I just tried to assess her, touch her. She's completely face down in the yard. She is stiff.
Okay. Do you know if she, do you see any blood or anything where she, I'm calling the cops. Are you there?
I am.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was outside.
It's okay. I'm not sure what happened to the line there for a second. Do you see any blood or anything to where, from where she fell?
I don't know if I should move her over. I mean, she is completely face down.
Okay. I mean, can you just check and see if she's breathing? If she's not breathing and you know she's gone, then just leave her where she's at. If she, okay.
1 minute. I'm completely not sure.
Okay, and that's the only blood that you would see?
That's what I can see without moving her over. I haven't seen her face.
Do you know if she was suicidal at all?
I have no clue. I've met her one other time. You know, like my girlfriend said, people were over last night. She was her birthday party. We're not the woman that we believe to be deceased, but it's my girlfriend's birthday party. Instead of having everybody go out, she had everyone stay in. And she was the last one I saw before everybody was typically put off to bed. She was the last one in the kitchen. She was just either waiting around for a ride or waiting until the morning.
Okay. How far is the, where she would have fell from, how far is the deck from the ground?
I would probably say maybe 20 feet.
Okay.
You know, 20 feet from where your feet would be on the railing. The railing itself is maybe 3.5, 4 feet.
Okay. And what is her name?
I know her name. We call her Tam. I'm assuming that's short for Tammy or Tamra.
Now, there's a lot of different perspectives about what happened that morning, and so there's a lot of different reports, a lot of different stories from a lot of different people. So it's very hard to sort of like narrow out what the real truth is or the real version of events. But as far as we can tell, there was about a 2-hour discrepancy from the time that Tamla's body was found by the aunt and the time that they called 911. And that's a solid chunk of time to leave a dead body in your backyard. It was this 2-hour difference that made people a little bit suspicious of John and her boyfriend because, I mean, it seems very, very odd to leave your friend, like no less, in the backyard dead like that. It was weird. Another thing that seemed really weird to the public was that when police did show up, there was no ambulance, no paramedics had arrived yet. And so instead of waiting for the paramedics to arrive, the police just went and checked the body themselves and pronounced Tamla dead. And it is not usual at all for someone to be pronounced dead without an actual medical professional present. Like, that's bizarre. The police actually cancelled the ambulance and told them not to worry anymore because, yeah, she's dead, we're good, she's dead. Like, what? It was really, really odd in this circumstance in particular because it's not like it was something obviously like naturally caused. It was, she had fallen from a balcony. Like, that very easily could have potentially been a homicide. What cop in their right mind would think that they would just like pronounce her dead without a medical professional? Like, that is ridiculous. From here, the police did officially label the case an open case, but nothing was really done. There wasn't really any news coverage, like, at all. The police didn't find anything that they thought was worth sharing with the public, let alone the family. And nobody seemed to be particularly concerned with the case, not even the people that were in the house that night when she died, except for Tamla's family, because obviously they want to know what the fuck happened to Tamla. But they were the only ones who acted like they gave a fuck, which is like, why would you not care about this poor girl dying in such a bizarre, random way like this? Tamla's friends in particular spoke up about the case lacking urgency and they were like really fucking angry, which fucking who wouldn't be? But they sort of brought it up and raised a question and made a loud noise about it and said, well, if this was a white woman who had been found dead after attending a party only with black people in attendance, and she was the only white one and she was found dead, like, she would be plastered all over the fucking news. So why isn't Tamla getting the same attention? And I mean, I don't know whether that's true or false, or whether it was a race thing, or whether it, I mean, who knows, but people were really starting to see a pattern. A lot of people compared this case to the Kendrick Johnson case, which was a teenage boy. He was also black. He was found rolled up in a gym mat at his school, and it was ruled a suicide. There's a lot of shit in that case. I think I'm gonna have to cover it, but if you know who that is, they were trying to compare those and saying, like, I'm seeing a pattern here. And I'll admit, this wasn't the easiest case to research, not by any means. Like, there wasn't a lot of information, and the information that was out there was sort of both ends of the spectrum. There wasn't really anything in the middle. It was very hard to find credible sources. I'm really grateful for the ones I did find, but it's a little bit odd to find a case like this with this much like shit going on and not have a lot of news coverage. It is bizarre to me. So if you can find any links and further reading about this case, please drop them below, because I'd be really interested to see what else there is. So as I said, the police immediately ruled it an open case, which means the police were supposed to be investigating the case. Like, that's kind of the whole point. But out of the 10 people who were in that home that night, not one of them was actually brought into a police station for questioning. Every time they did any sort of statement or questioning, they were allowed to just do it at their house or do it to their convenience. None of them had been arrested. None of them had like done anything that they didn't want to do, which was odd. The host, John, and Jose, her boyfriend, were actually able to write their statements in the home the morning she was found dead at the same table, unsupervised. How the fuck are you gonna let two witnesses sit at the same table to write a statement about a dead woman? Like, what? You don't even let kids sit next to each other to copy homework. You don't even let kids with an incident report about someone stealing a handball sit together for a fucking statement. And you're gonna let two potential murderers potentially sit together to write a statement. What? Every single person in that house that night, all 10 people, all agreed they didn't hear anything, they didn't see anything, and they didn't know anything. And police just sort of took their word for it. They just were like, oh, okay, we tried. It's probably worth mentioning that allegedly every single one of these 10 people had connections somehow to either politics or police or the law, and were all extremely, extremely fucking wealthy. And I mean, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with anything, except for the fact that John tried to gift the police officers who were assigned that case, who were investigating the death of Tamla. She decided to give them gift certificates worth thousands of dollars. Every single one. She tried to just like offload these gift certificates, and the police were like, wow, thank you so much, but that's super inappropriate and we can't take that. And she was like, ah, darn, I'll just give it to my kids. Like, what? Anyone with their brain like screwed in right would not think, I'll give some money or some gift certificates to these investigators. Like, do you think that makes you look innocent? Because I don't. It's also been alleged that Tamla's best friend did go and ask these 10 people, like, what happened that night? I need to know. I want to know what happened to my best friend. Is there anything you can tell me? I need answers. And allegedly they threatened her and told her never to ask again, and they just like completely refused to have anything to do with it, which a lot of people found that weird too, because I mean, I think I definitely would want to help someone if I knew they were mourning, but I mean, I can also see why you wouldn't, because things can get twisted and like if it's an investigation. So I see both sides of that, but you decide. So the group said that the last time anyone saw Tammy alive was 1:40 a.m., which was when everyone decided that they were going to go to bed. And the house's security system showed that the last person to leave the house was at 1:47 a.m., which was a girl named Bridget, and she's supposedly the last person to ever seen Tammy downstairs alive. Another person left at 4 a.m., and they didn't see Tammy. The security system also showed that the balcony door was opened at 1:49 a.m., closing again at 1:50 a.m., and that was supposedly Tamla going out for a cigarette. That's what John and Jose claim, is that she wanted a cigarette before she went to bed. So that was her opening and then closing the door behind her. But the door was then opened a third time at 1:57 a.m. and never closed. It was open all the way up until the next morning when someone found it and closed it again. So this means Tammy went onto the balcony at 1:49 a.m., closed the door behind her at 1:50 a.m., then either she opened the door at 1:57 a.m. to stay on the balcony and then fall to her death, or she opened the door at 1:57 a.m. to go inside and grab something or do something, and then came back, forgetting to shut the door for a second time, and fell to her death. Or it means someone else opened the door at 1:57 a.m., something happened on the balcony, Tamla fell to her death, and then they returned to the house without shutting the door again. What of those options? I mean, there's probably more different, variations of what could have happened, but like, what makes the most sense to you? It just doesn't make a lot of sense that she would open the door to stay on the balcony. So if she did open the door, she obviously had like some goal, some aim. Like, she was obviously going to talk to someone. Maybe someone was in there and she was talking to someone, or she wanted to walk back into the house. I can't imagine her going back in and then coming back out unless she forgot something, which surely it didn't take her 7 minutes to realize that she forgot something. I don't know, I find that bizarre. So these security features were super helpful in showing when people came and went from the house, and when the doors were open, and when people were like moving around. But you know what would have been even more helpful would have been security cameras. Like, they would have been really great if they could, like, see what happened, right? It's such a shame that John had this massive security system, but she didn't have security cameras. Except, hold on a fucking minute, she did!
My girlfriend has cameras here on the back deck that we can check.
Okay.
That I think would have caught the incident if she fell from here. Again, I don't know. It's hard to say if she fell from the deck or if she was already downstairs. She was the only smoker here, and I'm sorry.
John had cameras in her backyard and her balcony that showed the doors, showed the back patio, showed the grass, and showed literally where she would have fallen. She literally had cameras that aimed like at all of these locations. Normally these cameras were like super well maintained, like all bills were paid, or technical issues were like dealt with, but for some bizarrely odd timing reason, that doesn't make sense, but for some reason that night the cameras weren't working, and there's a little bit of a discrepancy as to why. I believe John said that it was because they ran out of battery, and a lot of people are unsure as to whether she meant running out of battery, like physically running out of battery, or meaning that she hadn't paid the next payment for the security system, and so that's how they like ran out of battery. But a lot of people agree that, like, seeing as John was fairly wealthy and she usually kept them and everything else in her house really well maintained, a lot of people think that she didn't miss the payment. That doesn't really make sense, especially seeing as the timestamps for all the doors was still working. It was the same security system, so bit odd. I have seen a lot of people allege that they didn't run out of battery at all, and that John had actually emailed and paid off the security system, the security company, to erase the footage from that night and to claim that they had run out of battery, and forge all these different emails to prove that. I don't know if I want to believe that, because if something happened that night, even if something didn't, even if it was an accident, like that footage would be pretty alarming. So if someone was seriously able to be paid off for that after seeing that, like, that's scary. That's a big fucking yikes. And I guess there's obviously the option of like nobody watched it, they just saw that she was gonna pay him and like deleted it without watching, but I would be too curious not to watch. So I mean, I don't know, but that was all alleged. I don't know the validity of it, so make your own decision on that one as well. This whole case is just a lot of like, no one knows, no one fucking knows the truth. Someone who was exceptionally shady throughout this case though was Jose, and he gave a number of different statements that all, like, none of them matched. In one statement, he told investigators that the last time he saw Tammy was in the kitchen while she was trying to decide whether she would stay or whether she would go home to like sleep at her house. But then in another statement, he claimed that the last time he saw her, she said like, "Good night, I'm gonna go sleep in one of the kids' rooms." So that's a bit of a discrepancy. That's a little bit of conflicting information. There's also a discrepancy as to whether people were already awake and cleaning the house when Tamla's body was found. The aunt told police that when she went and informed everyone, like, they were already awake and cleaning. But what Jose and John claimed to the police was that when she came in, she actually came and woke them up to tell them. That's a big difference. Like, how you wouldn't forget that you were awake and cleaning, and she wouldn't forget that she woke someone up. So that's shady as fuck, in my opinion. The thing that really set off alarm bells though was, again, Jose. He worked as a pre-trial services officer, pre and post Tamla's death. And this is the kicker. He was fired after using his position to access confidential files relating to Tamla's death, relating to her investigation. Someone who was in the house the night that she died, someone who wrote a statement at the same table as another key witness, one of the first people to see her dead body, the person who was on the phone to 911, the person so heavily involved in Tamla's death case, the person who gave different statements that didn't add up. He fucking got fired from his job for accessing confidential information relating to her death. What? Like, he allegedly, not by me, alleged by someone else, not me, I promise, could have potentially tampered with that. Like, what? After this, online attention to Tammy's case just skyrocketed because people were like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? And this led to the police closing Tamla's case, which normally would be a really, really good thing. But in this fucking case, no, it's not. They determined that Tamla Horsford fell by accident from the second-story balcony, resulting in her death. Now, an autopsy was done back in November when Tamla's body was found, but the results and the cause of death from that autopsy wasn't released to the public or to Tamla's family for 4 months after her death, only then being released due to public scrutiny. The autopsy report shows that Tamla had significant blunt force trauma injuries to her head, her neck, and her torso. The county sheriff who was in charge of the case contacted the medical professional who did the autopsy, and he said, "We're closing the case." He then asked, "Are you comfortable signing off that these injuries were the cause of death?" To which the coroner signed off on and concluded that those injuries were consistent of someone who had fallen from that height. I don't know if I've mentioned, but that height wasn't very high, by the way. I'll make sure to put in photos because it wasn't that high. Also, side note, this is also odd because if you were like seriously concerned about getting to the bottom of this case, you wouldn't give the coroner like a deadline and be like, "We're closing the case. Are you comfortable with saying that this was appropriately the cause of death?" No, you would wait for the coroner to give you the cause of death. You wouldn't suggest it and say, "Are you comfortable?" You would wait for them to write their own fucking statement and cause of death. Like, that's how this works. Police don't do that. That's weird. Not to mention, he already said we're closing it. How can you close it without the autopsy report? How can you conclude what the cause of death was without knowing the cause of death? This is a small detail, but this is like a huge detail. Like, what? The autopsy report included injuries of blunt force trauma to the back of her head, her neck, and her torso. It also included cuts to her face, her wrists, her fingers, and her feet. It was cuts on her lower leg, as well as a laceration to the left ventricle of her heart. So her injuries were like a little bit more complex than just like a fall. It was also concluded that her time of death was 1:30 a.m., which is very close to the timestamps of the door at 1:47 a.m. They also did a toxicology report that showed at the time of Tamla's death, she had a blood alcohol reading of 0.238, which is 3 times over the legal driving limit. It also picked up traces of THC and Xanax in Tamla's system. Now, Tamla didn't suffer from anxiety. She didn't have any prescription medication. She wasn't on any medication as far as her friends knew, as far as her family knew, and yet she had Xanax in her system. Dawn, however, suffered greatly from anxiety, and she publicly shared that on more than one occasion. She also publicly shared that she was a taker and a user of Xanax, and that she would die if she didn't have her Xanax. Not trying to link it in any way, but just thought that that was worth noting. Now, this autopsy was ordered by the state, and obviously because it's ordered by the state can choose whoever the fuck they want to do the autopsy. But Tamla's family was awarded the privilege to order their own autopsy, and so they did just that. In their autopsy, they found that there was post-mortem injuries on Tamla's body. This means someone or something had injured Tamla after she already died. And the coroner was able to tell this by the different way the blood coagulates and like it just, you know, science and stuff. They found that her wrist had been broken post-mortem after she was dead, and they were able to tell that by like there was no blood pooling underneath, so that's how you know that it was after death. And this was brought to the sheriff's attention, and people were fucking outraged. Like, if she had fallen from that balcony by accident and died from a fall, died from blunt force trauma, how did her wrist break after she died? How can that happen? That's impossible. But the sheriff's office just didn't give a fuck, so nothing was done. Tamla's dad was actually relieved when the case was finally closed, because in his eyes that meant that him and his team of lawyers, they could get like private investigators and they could look into the case themselves and they could find some real evidence to then try and reopen it and like have someone convicted. But that didn't really go to plan. He was actually like pretty over the moon about it, because it meant that finally his team would be able to access like what used to be confidential information, like crime scene photos and statements and things along those lines. So they set up a GoFundMe page, which GoFundMe pages are so popular and they can raise so much money and do so much for people who are in need. And they set up a GoFundMe page that had a goal of $25,000, and that money was to help them like invest money into an investigation into Tamla's death. They would also allocate some of the money to go towards like Tamla's children. She had 5 boys and 1 stepdaughter and like a single dad now, which it's incredibly hard to go from being like a team to now by yourself with that many kids and trying to stay strong for that many fucking kids. So they were going to allocate some of that money to go towards like helping those kids, like paying bills, you know what I mean? And as of this year, 2 years after her death, that fucking GoFundMe page only has $7,000. $7,000. Like, that's not even gonna help the fucking kids, let alone help the kids and the investigation. Like, bro, people pay so much money for like cats and stuff. And I'm not saying don't spend your money on where you want to spend your money. Like, spend your money where you want to spend your money, regardless if it's on a cat. I get if you care about cats, but like, this is horrible. Like, is this not more important to people? Like, what the fuck? It's honestly no wonder that there hasn't been any breakthroughs, because like no one's looking into it anymore. How could they look into it when they don't have any funding? Like, Oh my god. The family hasn't given up hope yet. They are so hopeful that they will find out what happened. All they want is justice for Tamla, for their mother, for their wife, for their daughter, their sister, their friend. Like, they just want justice for this woman who meant the world to all of them and who was such a kind and caring soul. She always gave more than she ever took, and like she didn't deserve to die like this, and she didn't deserve to go out with an investigation who they didn't give a fuck. They just didn't fucking care, and no one at that party fucking cared, and no one who spent her last day with her, like her last minutes of life, fucking cared about her. Like, that's horrible. Please, if you care about this story in any fucking way at all, please just like share her story, talk about her story, tweet her story, like look into it, promote it. Like, no one deserves that. No one deserves to die like this and just be forgotten and no one fucking cares. Like, it's so wrong. Like, please just share this shit. You might think that like your one like or your one share or your one status or tweet won't do anything, but if it wasn't for social media and like the collective voice of everyone saying no, like, do this shit for Tamla, half of this case wouldn't have even turned out the way it would have. You know what I mean? Like, the police didn't take it seriously until people like fucking take it seriously. Like, they need a voice. Like, help give Tamla a voice. So this is the case of the Tamla Horsford murder. I'm sorry if it's a little bit all over the place. I get a little bit like wrapped up in this one and just like stumbling over my words, but this story is just insane to me. Let me know what you think about this one. All comments are welcome. I'd really like to know what you think about it, whether you think like there is more to the story, like I believe there is. I don't necessarily believe that it's murder, but I do think someone knows something that they're just not telling, and I think her family deserves to hear it. You know what I mean? So let me know what you think. Do you think that it was an accident? Do you think that it was handled correctly or incorrectly? Do you think that the people there were suspicious or shady? Like, let me know your thoughts on this case. Let me know in the comments down below, or you can head over to my Facebook, which is skyweb with 3 B's, and let me know there. I'd really love to hear your opinion. Be sure to give this video a big thumbs up if you feel like it. I would really appreciate it, and be sure to subscribe so that you can see all my new videos. I post every single Thursday all about true crime. Make sure you guys are being safe out there. Don't mix drugs and alcohol. It's not a good outcome. Don't abuse your power at your jobs to access confidential information about people that you were in the presence of when they died. Mysteriously, might I add. And most importantly, don't let Tamla Horsford die without giving her family like justice or an answer or closure. Share her story. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Stay safe. Bye.